Welcome to She Moves Bravely, a podcast dedicated to empowering women through stories of resilience, courage, and success. I'm your host, Shantae Dent. Today, I have the honor of introducing you to a woman who moves bravely. Her name is Catherine Garrett. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Shantae. I'm so honored to be here on your show today.
I am honored to have you based off of our pre-conversation. It's a miracle that you are here, that you are alive having this conversation with me. I want to give you the opportunity to share your story and how your experience has led you to what you're doing today.
Yes, of course. Thank you again. A little bit about me. I am a Florida girl. I love the sunshine and the beach. Born and raised here. Moved a lot as a child because I was a Navy brat. And then in New Year's Eve of 2014, I met my husband. And so we've been married. This coming May will be 8 years. And then we have two little girls who are 4 and 6. And a little bit about my story is when I was in labor with my second daughter, literally in the hospital bed, taking a nap because I'd just gotten the epidural a couple hours prior, trying to rest before we have this baby. I suffered what's called an amniotic fluid embolism. And that condition is when amniotic fluid or a hair cell, a nail cell, something from the baby gets in your bloodstream, which at one point they thought did not happen during pregnancy. That has since been debunked. That is a normal process during pregnancy. But for whatever reason, certain women with certain babies, because mind you, I had already had another baby, another little girl. But when it got in my bloodstream, I had a reaction and my body went into this intense immune response. And this, I'll try to give you the very short, the Cliff Notes version because it's a long story, but basically went into cardiac arrest, had to be resuscitated multiple times on life support. I was in a coma for 9 days, had I think it was 6 surgeries during that time, had a stroke as well. Unfortunately, my perinatal trauma left me disabled. As you can imagine, what the last 4.5 years have been like, it's been really challenging. But I will say, even in the challenging, God has been so good. He's been so faithful. And so, just our constant. That's just no way to put it. But if I have to think about one overcoming moment, it would probably be initially those 9 days when I was in a coma, because my family was told, she's not going to make it through the night multiple times. At one point, they were talking about a kidney transplant and a double leg amputation because of just the trauma that my body had endured. I also needed a machine called ECMO. So think like life support, but it acts as your heart and lungs because my heart and lungs were not working, basically. And so my family was told I had a 1% chance of survival. So you can just imagine the trauma that my body went through. And, through the Lord's provision, thousands. I mean, my husband works for Wycliffe Bible Translator. So we have through his job, we have a network of people all around the world. And so thousands and thousands of people praying for our family all around the world. But my overcoming moment would be just merely waking up.
Mm.
And, a lot of times people say, we're praying for complete healing. We're praying that God is going to continue to speak in your life. And he does. I don't want to negate the fact that he doesn't, but he definitely does. However, maybe the fact in that I survived is all the healing that God is going to do this side of heaven. And, like I said earlier, you can imagine what the last 4.5 years have been like. It's been really hard and really challenging, but we've been so blessed by the thousands of people who've prayed for us around the world, and just the miracles that God has done and continues to do in our story. It's just priceless. It really is.
Priceless indeed. a miracle indeed. You nailed it. Your body went through major trauma. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even think that that severe of an outcome with your experience and even leading into coma. When I listen to stories, your story, the multiple stories I'm privileged to hear, I'm visual, and so I'm hearing your words, and I'm also imagining, and this is playing out on a screen. And I'm imagining as your body is responding, what in real time is going on in the minds of the physicians, your husband,
Mm-hmm.
all of the immediate decisions, saving your life, ensuring your baby girl is healthy, that she survives as well. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I think for probably too long, acknowledge the trauma my daughter went through
Mm.
first and foremost. It
Mm.
took about 9 months for me to, and granted, during those 9 months to a year, I had like 4 rehospitalizations. So a lot of it was just survival. We had no time to even process
Mm.
what I had been through because my body was not only recovering, it was having more complications. And I vividly remember a friend telling me we had a little girl unfortunately pass away from cancer in our church family. And I remember going, I'm really close with my pastor and his wife. Our families are like basically one family unit. And I remember going to support my dear friend Cynthia, and she's obviously upset and trying we're all grieving the loss of this little girl. And I remember her saying, that just speaks to the fragility of life because this little girl was 14, 15 months old, less than 2 years old. It's really young. And that was the moment that like the light bulb went off of like, not only did I endure this trauma, my daughter did as well, because she was still inside me. I was still pregnant when this happened. And it was a whole new process of processing what she went through. And then again, like what my husband went through. And as more time has gone on, talking to other people and my family or friends who have, been so kind to share with me what their experience was like. And my husband in particular, I remember nothing, probably because of the being in the ICU, uh, probably because of the stroke, probably because of a trauma response, all of those things coupled together. I have about a month that I have no memory of. But my husband literally remembers everything. And so, he endured his own trauma. And a lot of people say that it's secondary trauma, but I don't given that we're one unit, I don't necessarily like that term. Obviously, he wasn't the one laying on the surgery table, but he had all of these decisions to make. And at one point I was actually in the OR, and when your kidneys shut down, it's not processing the fluid off of your body. So I weighed about 50 pounds more than I do now. And when that happened, your legs, well, in me, it was my legs just swelled and swelled and swelled and swelled. And it got to the point that there was no more room to swell. And so they do a surgery called a fasciotomy. And so they cut into your skin and I think the top layer of muscle, maybe, to relieve that pressure. And I was literally in the OR, ready to go on the table. And the surgeon calls my husband and says, we have a small pulse in her feet. So we can either wait or we can proceed with the surgery. And my husband, was like, well, what happens if we do one or the other? If we wait, and she still needs the surgery, we'll do it emergently. If we go ahead and proceed with the surgery, which is what the surgeon recommended, that's what he thought we should do. Then we proceed with the procedure. My husband chose to wait. And granted, I have damage to my leg because of that decision. But on the other hand, I don't have multiple more scars on my leg because of that decision. I also got to talk with my pastor's wife about what she observed and witnessed during that time. And she was like, it was literally like God was upholding him, my husband. And she said, just the immense amount of decisions that he had to make, not only for you, but our daughter as well. And the NICU team was incredible. Well, the whole medical team, the whole hospital, like they accommodated him as much as they could. Um, Eli had a direct line to the Lord and making these really hard, life altering decisions because, if he had made a decision out of fear and proceeded with that fasciotomy, or at one point they were like, we're going to have to amputate her legs. And I'm a horseback rider. So, not that you can't ride without your legs, it's just a lot harder. So yeah, my husband was like, dear God, like please don't take her legs, she's a horseback rider, like that's what gives her life. And um I am happy to report I do ride now again. It's not like it used to be. I have to do therapeutic horseback riding, and so they have a specialized training on how to help people with disabilities. And growing up I used to ride for hours, like 3 4 hours at a time, and now it's 20, maybe 30 minutes before my leg is killing me and I just have to get off. But at the same time it gives me so much life, and I feel like I can't accurately describe having what it's like having something back in my life that I had before I got sick. Again, a priceless gift from the Lord.
Priceless, yeah. Oh my. Thank you for clarifying that you were not aware of what was going on. I knowing that, but I imagine that's something important that the listeners would want to know. And so I'm glad you clarified that as I took a deep dive to explore the trauma and not wanting listeners to feel as if I negated what you might have been experiencing in that actual moment. So thank you, Catherine, for clarifying that. And as you clarified, yes, you were not conscious or aware of anything that was going on. But again, no, your child was still in your room. And as the days went by, the weeks went by, your husband is being presented with life-altering questions about you. And then when you talked about, geez, there's so much emotion behind this story, even what your newborn experienced, because I think about what life was like after giving birth, what those experiences are like without the complications that you endured. And so one can only imagine what it was like navigating through maintaining your health and the health of your child. Number one, I'm grateful that you had community. I love to point that out as often as I can, because sometimes when we are going through difficult situations, we either feel alone or sometimes we intentionally want to be alone. So much power in community. And as you mentioned, your pastor's wife was able to observe the God-given strength that your husband relied upon, and tell your husband we appreciate him. I can only imagine what that was like for him to see his precious wife, whom he loves dearly, in so many ways fighting, you were fighting for your life. And then there's juggling all the things, still have children, that need to be attended to, the love, the attention, and the care, etc. As you went through this time of recovery, and you talked about the disability and having to navigate through those areas and still navigating through those areas, I do want to highlight you talking about the greatest gift is you have life. And as a believer myself, I understand exactly what you were saying when we are praying for that full recovery, 100% complete healing. And why not have that as a prayer? Nothing wrong with it. I absolutely love and admire that you're still able to rejoice and see God is in it. My healing has come. It might not look as if you've never gone through anything, that there's no sign of the trauma, but what you can focus on and rejoice about is I am alive. I am here to be that mom that God has called you to be. And what an incredible way to give God glory. Again, I'm happy to connect with you today. Life is precious. Your life was on the line. And thank God you are here today to share your story. I know that the power of this podcast, the power of women like you is you are a testimony. You are in many ways the light at the end of someone's dark tunnel. God uses your story to tell another woman, if it's a disability, if it's a birth trauma, whatever has come your way and has threatened or attempted to knock you down and take you out. Here you are today, Catherine, giving that woman hope.
Wow.
It's powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah.
I appreciate you too. I think even having this platform, I mean, it's so important to raise awareness for amniotic fluid embolism. It's incredibly rare condition. And I often joke, like, why did I have to pick that lottery ticket? But the reality is, there are so many women who unfortunately don't survive this condition. The mortality rates are improving with the advancement of technology, which is, again, a God-given gift. But there's still, I know a lot of women who don't survive. And so I feel like it's my duty. I have to use my voice to not only give hope to women going through this condition specifically, but like you said, birth trauma or navigating disability while trying to be a mom. Like, motherhood brings its own nuances and glory and challenges and all the things.
Yeah.
In and of itself. And so trying to navigate that while having the cards stacked against you, basically. And, it can be discouraging. And I think you hit a really important point that community is everything. And we have a beautiful church family.
You're right. Community is everything. And I love your honesty, especially as followers of Christ. Sometimes some of us just act like nothing is discouraging. And the reality is we have a hope. That's what matters. We know who to turn to. And it's also important to realize that we are human. There are days where we feel discouraged and frustrated because of our circumstances. And I appreciate your transparency there, because I don't want anyone to misunderstand, the essence of your story or any woman's story, that no one is or should not ever make it seem as if that was my story, the worst of the worst, and it's all good and it happened overnight. There is a process that we go through, and I even like to normalize every once in a while. Sometimes we do have those moments or those days where we are angry all over again, frustrated all over again, feeling that discouragement. And I believe it's important to normalize those feelings and normalize the emotions. Of course, encourage individuals to take the next step into, a solution-oriented mindset, so that we don't feel stuck in that state, but to not overlook how we really feel, about a situation. I believe that's important. Yes.
Yeah. And, so last fall was when we hit 4 years, and I was, putting the pedal to the floor, basically, like working super hard in my rehab, just doing all the things that I needed to do. And I I am reading this book called Lord, I Want to Know You by Kay Arthur, and it talks about the different names of God. And um, Jehovah Rapha is God is our healer. And through that book, I just realized like, am I relying on rehab to heal my body, or am I open hearted, open handed, relying on the Lord to heal my body and whatever He's going to do in our story? And I think what you said about hope is so important because there are days, just last week, I got sad that my leg won't work. Like it's hard to walk. It's hard to ride horses. It's hard to play with my kids. Like there's a lot of things that are more challenging now. But even in that, like I still have hope God's not done in our story. I don't know what it's going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years. I'm still working hard to, build the muscle in my leg and hopefully over time have more healing. And you utilize like different techniques like acupuncture is a great healing modality. But I think too, like I listened to a podcast. One of my favorite podcasts is called The Good Hard Story. And they talk about on their podcast, hoping while you cope. And so I think that that's a perfect picture of we're, we need to be coping with whatever our story is and hoping at the same time, because also like God created all emotions.
Yes.
He didn't just create joy and laughter. He created sorrow and grief and even anger,
Yeah.
and not processing those feelings. I feel like our society does an awful job on this personally. But not processing those emotions, like it's going to come out some way or another. And so I think that that's where it's so important to hold space for both. My counselor likes to call it divine tension, and I think that that's the perfect name because God did. He created both of those emotions at the
Yes.
same time.
I like this podcast, Hoping While You Cope. So that leads me to what was on my mind as you were sharing. I wanted to commend you because oftentimes we will step up when we feel as if it is finished.
Mm,
I can stand strong and proud and share all the things because I have arrived.
mm,
And what I love about what I just heard you share is I'm still processing. I'm still working on this. I am still open to what is going to transpire through my story and in my life. And I'm internally doing cartwheels. Yes, yes. Because there's a fight inside of you that's saying it's not over. It's not over till it's over. And in the meantime, here am I, a vessel willing to serve, willing to support and be that voice. So much about you that I admire. And I've shared in a previous podcast, one of my pet peeves is when people say, get out of your feelings, get over it. So to your
mm,
point, I do know that we have come a long way societal wise. There's still a ways to go because as you stated, I agree, our feelings and our emotions, they are a part of our lives for a reason, not to be denied or dismissed. What we are to learn, I believe, is to understand how to process the feelings. How do
mhm.
we process the emotions? They are a part of our being. And if we could put more energy into learning how to work through our emotions in a healthy manner, how much like I just feel like our world would be better off if we could put more energy into that versus individuals again denying and dismissing,
Mhm.
overlooking the importance of going through a recovery or a healing process internally so they can show up and be more that whole and complete individual.
Well, and I also wonder if not fully processing our emotions and pressing into them and praying about them, is that denying something that is that possibly denying something that God is going to do through that process, so to speak? Like, is that a sin per se to not fully process your emotions? Because let's say, for so long, hypothetically speaking, someone goes through a perinatal trauma situation and it's very, very severe. And the partner, the husband, doesn't process his emotions, isn't talking about the event, is that pride? Because we know pride absolutely is a sin. But can we take that one step further and saying, like, is it really a sin to not be processing our emotions?
Interesting perspective there. Okay. Wow. Well,
Did,
interesting because what I'm thinking is, what does not processing our emotions lead to? And oftentimes it leads to an unpleasant situation.
mm,
For example, I'll stay along the line that you started on. If there's a husband who has not processed this type of trauma, he's holding it in, and maybe, unfortunately, one day he will erupt like a volcano
mm-hmm,
through anger. Worse than that, physical, right? Physical
mm-hmm.
retaliation. Gosh, which, yes, those suppressed emotions can lead to a dire situation. That's a good point right there. Now, I know that your experience has led you into an incredible line of work. Would you share more about what you're doing today?
um so first and foremost, I'm a mom. Like, that's my heartbeat. I've always wanted to be a mom. And then I did want to be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool my kid, all the things. Um, God has not opened that door clearly yet. We still, again, have hope that it will happen one day. But as a hobby, right now I have my own podcast. It's called Birth Trauma Stories Podcast, and it's holding space and finding light after perinatal trauma. And it's, like, I'm sure similar to how you feel, it's truly an honor to come alongside my guests and hear more about their story and what God is doing in their life and how they're changing the maternal health world.
Incredible. Yes, you're an advocate now, and I love how you're using your experience to support others to shed light into an area that might be unknown to many. I commend you, and I am rooting for you as you continue on your incredible journey. I would love to give you an opportunity to share golden nuggets that could encourage our listeners.
The first thing that comes to mind, this is something I have to remind myself often when I'm feeling discouraged or I'm in pain or maybe not even wanting to go to rehab or do my rehab at home. We can do hard things because of what Christ has done for us.
We can
Yes.
do hard things because of what Christ has done for us. Beautiful statement and a beautiful reminder that we are not in this alone. We thank God for the friends, the families that He sends our way, even more so keeping our mind set on Him, on Christ, the one who gives us the strength to do all things. Catherine, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story, being a hope and a light to many other women.
You're so welcome. Thank you again for the space to share my story.